Former Bank of Canada Governor David Dodge is my guest live now. Mr. Dodge, good to see you as always. Thanks for making the time.
Good to be with you, Vassy.
In your view, does the fact that the premiers raised their concerns, sent a letter, wrote to Tiff Macklem, does it risk, as Mr. Macklem wrote to them, creating confusion about the operational independence of the bank?
I think there's a danger of that. I don't think it's hugely great, but there's always a danger. What is true, Vassy, and it's very important, is that the governments share with the bank their views about where the economy is going, what the problems are, and that the bank share its views with the premiers and with the Minister of Finance. This information exchange is absolutely critical. It's actually written into the Bank of Canada Act that the governor and the Minister of Finance consult regularly. So the information exchange is fine. And I think there is a bit of a worry that the public might misperceive it as more than an information exchange. But it's also absolutely true that governments, just like consumers, don't like high interest rates because it means they have to spend money on paying interest on debt rather than delivering services to their constituents. So that's always been true, and that is precisely the reason why we opted years ago to adopt a regime where the central bank has operational independence, subject to, of course, the goals which are set out in an agreement between the central bank and the government of Canada.
I wanted to zero in on the role of the federal government in all of this, and in particular, the interaction between fiscal policy and monetary policy. At the top of the segment, we played a portion of what the finance minister said today as to what her objectives for the fall economic statement will be. Stuff around home, stuff around making life more affordable, and then the third plank I found interesting around fiscal responsibility. To what degree, in your assessment, has fiscal policy impacted monetary policy over, let's say, the last 18 months in some?
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. There are two instruments to stabilize the economy. Stabilize in terms of keeping growth up and employment up, and in terms of keeping prices stable. One is fiscal policy, the budget balance, and the other is monetary policy, the interest rate set by the Bank of Canada. So there is a joint responsibility between the bank and the government of Canada to stabilize the economy, keep growth going, and keep prices stable. And so if indeed the federal government is running a very expansionist policy, an increase in the budget balance, that adds to inflationary pressures at a time when there's already excess demand in the economy. And it forces the bank, in order to do its job, to run a tighter policy. So these two normally work together, and that's why information exchange is so important between the government and the bank. So if the minister is right in what she says, and she's going to run a balanced budget in what she foresees, or at least is looking to a fall economic statement, which in fact will not create additional pressure, upward pressure on prices, then indeed it will make Mr. Macklem's job a lot easier and enable, at some point in the future, a reduction in the current interest rates.
So it's on that point I wanted to conclude around what Mr. Macklem's job is right now and ask you what your anticipation is for tomorrow's decision. There seems to be some consensus among private sector economists that the bank will hold the line once again. Is that your anticipation?
I don't know. We're at the point where whether the interest rate should stay exactly the same, go up a quarter or down a quarter, really doesn't affect that much, because it will be in 2024 that we really see these rates begin to bite, as all the folks that entered into mortgages in 2020 begin to have to renew their mortgage, and so really feel the bite. So I think we all anticipate that by the time we get into the second half of next year or the end of 2024, that the current rate of interest will indeed be such that it's beginning to bite, slow down the economy, and hence bring down the rate of inflation.
Okay, Mr. Dodge, I'll leave it there. Appreciate your analysis this evening, as always. Thank you.
My pleasure.